What if entire civilizations, once thriving and powerful, now lie hidden beneath our feet, waiting to reveal their secrets? Imagine walking over forgotten cities, their streets once bustling with life, their rulers commanding vast armies, their cultures shaping the course of history, now buried by time, nature, or the very sands that once witnessed their glory. These lost empires aren't just relics of the past, they're puzzles begging to be solved, stories yearning to be told. And today, we're embarking on a journey to uncover 20 of the most fascinating among them, kingdoms and cultures that vanished from the map but left behind tantalizing clues, whispers of their existence etched in ruins, artifacts, and legends. Why does this matter? Because every rediscovered empire rewrites a chapter of human history. These weren't just places, they were epicenters of innovation, ambition, and artistry. They traded goods and ideas across continents, built monuments that defied their time, and ruled over people whose lives were as vibrant and complex as ours today. Yet, somewhere along the way, they faded into obscurity, victims of war, climate, or simply the passage of centuries. But their legacies linger, waiting for explorers, archaeologists, and even satellite technology to piece together their stories. And what stories they are! From sprawling metropolises swallowed by jungles to golden cities lost in deserts, each empire we'll explore offers a glimpse into humanity's relentless drive to create, conquer, and endure. So where do we begin? Picture a kingdom so legendary, its very name evokes mystery, a place of untold wealth, advanced engineering, and a downfall wrapped in myth. Some say it was destroyed in a single day and night. Others believe it simply slipped beneath the waves, leaving only fragments behind. Sound familiar? This is just the first of 20 empires we'll uncover, each with its own riddles and revelations. Whether you're a history buff, a lover of mysteries, or just someone who wonders what else might be out there, waiting to be found, this journey is for you. Because the past isn't really gone, it's hidden, and it's calling us to dig deeper. High in the rugged highlands of northern Ethiopia, the ruins of Aksum whisper tales of a civilization that once stood shoulder to shoulder with the greatest empires of antiquity. This was no minor kingdom. Aksum commanded trade routes stretching from the Mediterranean to India, minted its own gold coins, and erected towering stone obelisks, some weighing hundreds of tons, as if daring the heavens themselves. At its peak, this African powerhouse was a melting pot of cultures, where Greek merchants haggled alongside Egyptian artisans, and Aksumite sailors navigated the Red Sea with skill that rivaled the Phoenicians. Yet, for all its grandeur, Aksum's decline remains one of history's most puzzling vanishing acts. By the 7th century, its ports fell silent, its coins stopped circulating, and the capital, once a bustling metropolis, slowly surrendered to the encroaching earth. Was it climate change that dried up its farmlands? Did shifting trade routes starve its economy? Or did the rise of Islamic caliphates redirect the lifeblood of commerce away from its shores? The answers lie buried, quite literally, beneath layers of time. Recent discoveries like the unearthing of Beta Samoti, a settlement revealing a 4th century Christian basilica, and troves of artifacts suggest Aksum's story is far from finished. Archaeologists now believe entire neighborhoods of its capital, complete with palaces and temples, may still slumber underground, untouched for centuries. And here's the tantalizing part. Local legends speak of a royal treasury hidden beneath the city, a hoard of gold and ivory that could rewrite our understanding of African wealth and influence in the ancient world. But Aksum is just the beginning. As we turn our gaze eastward, another empire beckons, one that mastered the waves, built floating cities, and then vanished beneath them, leaving only riddles etched in coral and sand. From the windswept highlands of Ethiopia, we journey east to the tropical coasts of Southeast Asia, where the Sriwijaya Empire once reigned supreme, not through towering monuments or sprawling cities, but by mastering the sea itself. This was a kingdom built on water, a thalassocracy whose wealth and influence flowed along ancient trade routes like the veins of a vast, invisible body. For centuries, Sriwijaya controlled the Malacca Strait, the choke point between the Indian Ocean and the South China Sea, taxing ships laden with spices, gold, and silks. Its merchants grew fabulously rich, its diplomats brokered peace between distant empires, and its Buddhist temples became magnets for pilgrims and scholars. Yet today, Srivijaya's physical footprint is so faint that historians once doubted it existed at all. Unlike other lost empires, Srivijaya left behind no grand pyramids or crumbling colosseums. Instead, its legacy is written in whispers, ceramic shards dredged from riverbeds, gold coins stamped with ancient scripts, and fleeting mentions in Chinese and Arabic texts. The empire's heart, thought to lie along Sumatra's Musi River, may now rest beneath layers of silt and water, swallowed by shifting shorelines and rising tides. This absence has sparked one of archaeology's most tantalizing hunts. Could Srivijaya's capitals be hidden underwater, their wooden palaces and bustling ports preserved in the murky depths? Modern technology is finally piercing that darkness. Sonar scans of the Musi River have revealed anomalous structures that could be man-made, lurking beneath the sediment. Local fishermen haul up treasures daily, statues of deities, jewels, even gold rings inscribed with Sanskrit. Each artifact is a clue, suggesting that Srivijaya's cities weren't lost to war or conquest, but to nature's slow reclamation. Some researchers believe the empire's downfall came from environmental shifts, rivers changing course, coastlines sinking, turning thriving ports into ghost towns. Others speculate that Srivijaya's reliance on maritime trade became its Achilles heel. When new routes emerged, its influence ebbed away like the tide. Yet the most exciting possibility remains, that Srivijaya's greatest secrets still lie underwater, waiting for the right explorer to uncover them. Imagine what we might find: a sunken royal court, a shipwreck crammed with treasures, or even an entire district frozen in time beneath the waves. Each discovery could rewrite our understanding of Southeast Asia's golden age, proving that empires aren't always measured in stone, but in the currents they once commanded. And speaking of currents, our next empire didn't just navigate them, it worshipped them. From the sea kingdoms of Srivijaya, we turn to a civilization that harnessed the power of rivers so brilliantly. Its name alone conjures images of grandeur and mystery, a land where water was life, death, and divinity all at once. Deep in the heart of Anatolia, where the rocky plains of modern-day Turkey stretch toward the horizon, the Hittite Empire once stood as a colossus of the Bronze Age. This was no ordinary kingdom. It was a military and technological powerhouse that rivaled Egypt and Babylon, forging an empire through a combination of ruthless diplomacy and revolutionary iron weapons. While others still relied on bronze, the Hittites mastered the smelting of iron, crafting blades and armor so advanced that their enemies whispered of magic. Their capital, Hattusa, was a marvel of its time, a sprawling fortress city with towering walls, secret tunnels, and archives filled with thousands of clay tablets documenting laws, treaties, and even recipes for beer. Yet, in one of history's most abrupt disappearances, Hattusa was abandoned seemingly overnight. Around 1200 BCE, as the Bronze Age crumbled under a wave of invasions, droughts, and mysterious calamities. The Hittites vanished from the stage. Their cities burned, their iron secrets were forgotten, and their name faded into legend. What happened? Was it the so-called Sea People's marauders who ravaged the Mediterranean? Did climate change and famine tear the empire apart from within? Or was it a perfect storm of disasters that even the mighty Hittites couldn't withstand? The answer may lie in their untranslated archives. Thousands of Hittite tablets remain undeciphered, locked in a script that could hold lost knowledge about everything from advanced metallurgy to forgotten religious rites. Some scholars believe these texts might even contain clues about the broader Bronze Age collapse, a catastrophe so complete that it plunged the Mediterranean world into a centuries-long dark age. Imagine uncovering a single tablet that rewrites our understanding of how civilizations fall. But the Hittites didn't entirely disappear. Their legacy echoes in unexpected places, from the biblical tales of giants to modern Turkey's cultural memory. Even their language never truly died. It evolved into forms that linger in the region today. And here's the haunting part. If you walk the ruins of Hattusa, you can still see the grooves where massive gates once swung shut, as if the city is waiting, just maybe, for its people to return. From the ashes of the Hittites, we turn to another civilization whose myth outlived its reality, a place so legendary that its name alone has become synonymous with lost grandeur. This time, the story doesn't begin in a desert or a jungle, but in the rolling green hills of Europe, where a people of unmatched artistry and mystery built a culture that vanished, leaving behind only circles of stone and whispers on the wind. The Minone Civilization thrived on the sun-drenched island of Crete, a culture so vibrant and advanced that it feels plucked from myth. Picture sprawling palace complexes like Knossos, with their vivid frescoes of leaping dolphins and acrobats vaulting over charging bulls, scenes that capture a society obsessed with artistry, athleticism, and the sacred dance between human and nature. These were not just decorations, they were windows into a world where religion, sport, and daily life intertwined seamlessly. The Minoans built multi-story buildings with sophisticated plumbing, traded across the Mediterranean, and developed Europe's first known writing system, Linear A. Yet their script remains one of archaeology's most stubborn enigmas, a code that could unlock secrets about their governance, myths, and sudden collapse. That collapse came with terrifying swiftness. Around 1600 BCE, the volcanic island of Thera, modern Santorini, erupted with cataclysmic force, triggering tsunamis that battered Crete's shores and blanketed the region in ash. Some scholars believe this disaster crippled Minone society, leaving it vulnerable to invasion by mainland Mycenaeans. Others argue the Minoans endured for centuries after, their culture slowly assimilated rather than destroyed. But the timing and scale of Thera's eruption have fueled endless speculation. Could this be the kernel of truth behind Plato's tale of Atlantis? A wealthy island nation, advanced beyond its peers, swallowed by the sea in a single day and night of fire. The parallels are irresistible, though the truth may forever linger just out of reach. What makes the Minoans uniquely haunting is how much we can see of their world, yet how little we truly understand. Their frescoes depict women in elaborate gowns presiding over rituals, suggesting a society where gender roles were fluid or even female-dominated. Their art lacks scenes of war, hinting at a peaceable kingdom more focused on commerce than conquest. Even their famed bull leaping may have been a rite of passage, a test of courage performed in sacred courtyards, but without deciphered records, these interpretations remain educated guesses. Every fragment of Linear A, every unearthed mural, feels like a postcard from a civilization that's simultaneously familiar and profoundly alien. And then there's the labyrinth, not just a myth but perhaps a memory. The sprawling layout of Knossos, with its maze-like corridors and ritual chambers, may have inspired the legend of Theseus and the Minotaur. Could the Minotaur itself symbolize the Minoans' eventual subjugation by the more warlike Mycenaeans, or was it a metaphor for the volcanic fury that shattered their world? The questions multiply, but the answers remain buried, waiting for some future archaeologist's trowel or linguist's breakthrough. As we leave the Mediterranean behind, another empire calls to us, one that conquered not seas but sky-piercing mountains. Far from the azure waters of Crete, in the shadow of the Andes, a people engineered terraces so precise, so enduring, that they defy the very passage of time. Their story begins not with a volcano's wrath, but with the slow, deliberate cultivation of an impossible landscape. High in the Andes, centuries before the Inca rose to power, the Wari Empire carved a civilization from stone and sheer will. Their domain stretched across the jagged peaks and arid valleys of ancient Peru, connected by a sprawling network of roads so advanced that the Inca would later adopt them as their own. The Wari didn't just build cities, they engineered them, crafting terraced farms that clung to mountainsides like staircases to the sky, and reservoirs that harnessed every precious drop of rain. At their height, they were master administrators, using knotted string quippers to record data and governing distant provinces with a precision that feels startlingly modern. Yet by the year 1000 CE, their bustling capital, Huari, lay abandoned, its grand plazas silent and its temples left to the wind. What caused their downfall? The clues are as fragmented as the pottery shards littering their ruins. Some theories point to a catastrophic drought that turned their carefully managed water systems into dust. Others suggest internal rebellion or the rise of rival states chipping away at their power. But the most tantalizing hints come from the looted tombs scattered across Wari territory. Grave robbers have plundered gold masks, jeweled bracelets, and textiles so finely woven they could rival silk artifacts that whisper of a ruling class with wealth and sophistication we've only begun to grasp. If these were the treasures stolen from minor nobles, imagine what might still lie hidden in an untouched royal tomb. Archaeologists recently uncovered a sealed burial chamber in El Castillo de Huami, filled with the remains of 63 noblewomen surrounded by riches. It's a glimpse into a society that valued female power, but also a reminder of how much we've lost to time and thieves. The Wari's greatest legacy might be their roads, thousands of miles of pathways linking highland cities to coastal ports, a blueprint the Inca would later expand into their own imperial highway. Yet unlike the Inca, the Wari left no written records, only enigmatic art. Ceramics depicting jaguar-headed deities and wooden staffs carved with faces that seem to watch you across the centuries. Their symbols resist easy interpretation, leaving us to wonder, were they warning of collapse or celebrating something far grander? And just as the Wari's story fades into speculation, another empire emerges from the sands, one that turned gold into gospel and built monuments not to kings but to gods. From the high Andes, we descend to a desert where the very earth seemed to gild its people, and where faith shaped a kingdom as enduring as the myths it left behind. South of Egypt, where the Nile carves a path through golden deserts, the Kingdom of Cush rose not in Egypt's shadow, but as its rival, equal, and sometimes conqueror. These weren't mere neighbors. Cush was a phoenix that repeatedly soared from the ashes of conflict, building pyramids steeper and more numerous than Egypt's, forging iron weapons when much of the world still clung to bronze, and crowning queens who led armies and negotiated treaties with a prowess that defied ancient gender norms. At its zenith, Kushite rulers even seized the Egyptian throne, governing as the 25th dynasty and leaving monuments from Luxor to the Sudan. Yet today, while Egypt's wonders draw millions, Kush's capital of Meroe sits quietly, its sandstone pyramids half buried in the dunes, its secrets only partially unearthed. What made Kush extraordinary wasn't just its military might, it was its adaptability. When Assyrians pushed the Kushites out of Egypt in the 7th century BCE, they didn't collapse. Instead, they retreated south, reinvented their economy around iron production, and built Meroe into an industrial powerhouse. The city's slag heaps still visible today hint at the scale of their furnaces, which churned out tools and weapons traded across Africa. Kush's iron wasn't just metal, it was a technological revolution that reshaped the continent. And then there were the queens, rulers like Ammonionas, who famously fought Rome to a standstill, losing an eye in battle but securing favorable terms from Augustus Caesar himself. Her victory stele, written in both hieroglyphs and Meroitic script, a language we still can't fully decipher, stands as a testament to a culture that blended Egyptian influences with distinctly African innovation. Yet Meroe's full story remains tantalizingly out of reach. Less than 30% of the city has been excavated. Beneath the sands could lie archives of Meroitic texts that might finally crack the code of their writing, or workshops revealing the true extent of their metallurgical genius. Even their pyramids hide mysteries. While Egyptian pyramids served as tombs, Kush's smaller, steeper structures may have had ritual purposes we don't yet grasp. And the greatest question of all, why did Meroe decline? Was it deforestation from iron production, shifting trade routes, the rise of Aksum to the east? The answers might lie in the very sands that now obscure its streets. From the heat-baked ruins of Meroe, we pivot to an empire that thrived not along a river, but in the harsh embrace of the desert, a Silk Road superpower whose cities glittered with wealth before vanishing beneath the dunes. Imagine a place where caravans brought Chinese silks to trade for Mediterranean glass, where Buddhist temples stood beside Zoroastrian fire altars, and where the language of government was a Greek. This was no mirage, it was a kingdom so cosmopolitan, its rediscovery rewrote history's map. Beneath the shifting sands of China's Taklamakan Desert lies a kingdom that defies expectations, a place where European-featured mummies wear tartan textiles, Buddhist monks penned Sanskrit manuscripts, and merchants traded jade along the Silk Road. This was Khotan, a thriving oasis whose very existence feels like a historical paradox. How did a Buddhist kingdom flourish in one of Earth's most inhospitable deserts? The answer lies in its rivers, now mostly vanished, which once turned the dunes into a fertile crossroads of cultures. Khotan wasn't just a stopover, it was a hub of scholarship and spirituality, producing some of the finest carpets and jade in Asia, while its scribes copied sacred texts that later influenced Tibetan Buddhism. Yet Khotan's most astonishing legacy might still be buried. Local legends speak of a vast library hidden beneath the sands, a trove of manuscripts that could rival the Dead Sea Scrolls in significance. Imagine uncovering Buddhist texts lost for centuries, or administrative records detailing daily life in a multicultural melting pot where Persian, Indian, and Chinese traditions collided. The clues are tantalizing. Fragments of parchment emerge during sandstorms, and satellite imagery reveals the outlines of structures lurking beneath the desert surface. Archaeologists suspect entire neighborhoods, maybe even royal archives, await discovery. But the Taklamakan is a ruthless guardian. Its dunes swallow expeditions whole, preserving secrets under layers of scorching sand. Khotan's downfall came gradually as rivers dried and trade routes shifted, but its cultural echoes lingered. The kingdom's jade continued to reach imperial China. Its Buddhist art inspired cave temples along the Silk Road, and its people, Those enigmatic mummies with their woven woolens hint at migrations we're only beginning to trace. Were they descendants of ancient Tocharians, traders from the steppes? Every artifact raises new questions about how far and wide Khotan's influence truly stretched. And just as Khotan's story fades into the desert winds, another empire emerges from the shadows, one whose warriors stormed out of the Eurasian steppe with such ferocity, they became the stuff of nightmares. From the silent sands of the Taklamakan, we turn to the thunder of hooves and the clash of steel, where a nomadic confederation didn't just conquer lands, they rewrote the map of Europe itself. The Hunnic Empire exploded across Europe like a storm, leaving behind legends of terror but few physical traces. Led by the infamous Attila, these nomadic warriors galloped out of the Eurasian steppe, striking fear into the hearts of both Rome and Constantinople. Their empire was a fleeting shadow on the map, more a whirlwind of conquest than a kingdom with fixed borders. Yet in their brief reign of chaos, they redrew the political landscape of Europe, hastening the fall of the Western Roman Empire and scattering tribes like the Goths and Vandals into lands they might never have reached otherwise. What's astonishing isn't just their brutality, it's how little they left behind. Unlike the Romans or Persians, the Huns built no grand cities, erected no monuments, and left no written records. Their legacy is written in the trembling accounts of their enemies and the occasional gold trinket pried from the earth. But one mystery lingers above all others. Where are the graves of their kings? Hungarian folklore speaks of the Hun burials, mounds along the Tisa River where Attila and his nobles might lie surrounded by plundered gold. In 2012, archaeologists uncovered a 5th century tomb near Budapest filled with weapons, horse gear, and a skeleton clad in gold, fueling speculation that this could be a Hunnic noble, if not Attila himself. The truth remains elusive. The Huns deliberately buried their dead in unmarked graves, some even diverting rivers to cover the sites, ensuring their secrets stayed hidden. Imagine what could still lie beneath those plains: a royal hoard of Roman gold, jeweled swords, or even the fabled Sword of Mars that Attila claimed was gifted to him by the gods. Yet for all their violence, the Huns' greatest impact was unintended. By destabilizing Rome's frontiers, they set in motion migrations that birthed medieval Europe. Their empire vanished as quickly as it arose, but its echoes shaped kingdoms from France to Russia. And just as the dust settled on the steppe, another empire was rising, not on horseback, but in outrigger canoes, mastering the vast Pacific with skills that defy modern understanding. From the windswept plains of Hungary, we sail to the world's greatest ocean, where the ancestors of modern Polynesians performed one of humanity's most audacious feats, settling islands scattered across millions of square miles with nothing but stars, waves, and ingenuity to guide them. This wasn't just exploration, it was empire building on water. The Taitonga Empire, centered in what's now Tonga, wove together over 300 islands into a maritime network where double-hulled canoes carried everything from volcanic stone tools to sacred tapestries between far-flung atolls. What's staggering isn't just their navigation, it's their governance. Without maps or writing, the Taitonga dynasty maintained trade routes stretching from Samoa to Fiji, enforced by a sacred king whose authority was whispered across the waves. Their capital at Ma held massive stone tombs, some weighing over 40 tons, hauled without beasts of burden or wheels. How oral traditions speak of walking the stones on wooden sledges, a feat of communal effort that mirrored their society's interdependence. Then, around the 16th century, their power waned. Some blame civil war, others point to European contact, but their true legacy isn't in ruins, it's in living traditions. Modern Polynesian navigators still sail by ancestral star paths, proving that some empires leave footprints not in the earth, but in the sea itself. And as we turn from the Pacific's expanse, another civilization calls, one that carved its destiny not in water, but in the unforgiving rock of the American Southwest. The Taitonga Empire didn't just rule land, it mastered the Pacific itself, an empire built on waves and woven together by the stars. At its height, this maritime kingdom stretched across thousands of miles of open ocean, connecting islands from Fiji to Samoa under the sacred authority of the Taitonga dynasty. Unlike empires that carved their names into stone or stamped coins with their likeness, the Taitonga left a different kind of mark, massive stone tombs called langi, some weighing as much as 40 tons, hauled into place without wheels or beasts of burden. These weren't just burial sites, they were power made visible, proof that a people who could move mountains of rock across islands could also command the loyalty of scattered atolls. What's even more astonishing is how they governed. Without written records, the Taitonga relied on oral histories and a complex system of sacred kinship ties. The king wasn't just a ruler, he was a living god, his authority radiating outward through a network of chiefs and navigators who carried his word across the sea. Trade wasn't merely economic, it was ritual. Canoes laden with precious red feathers, volcanic stone tools, and finely woven mats sailed between islands, binding the empire together in a web of mutual obligation and shared identity. The ocean wasn't a barrier, it was their highway, their lifeline, their divine inheritance. Yet by the 16th century, this vast network began to unravel. European contact brought disease and disruption, but the roots of decline may have run deeper. Some oral traditions speak of internal strife, of sacred kings losing their divine mandate. Others suggest that the sheer scale of the empire became its undoing, that maintaining connections across such vast distances grew impossible as climates shifted or resources dwindled. The Langi tombs, once symbols of unshakable power, were slowly reclaimed by jungle and time. But here's the twist, the Taitonga never truly disappeared. Their legacy lives in the voyaging traditions of modern Polynesia, where navigators still read the stars as their ancestors did, steering by the swell of the waves and the flight of birds. In a way, their empire didn't fall, it transformed, its spirit lingering in every outrigger canoe that still cuts through the Pacific surf. And as the echoes of the Taitonga fade into the horizon, another empire rises from the sands of Africa, one where gold flowed like water and scholars penned works that illuminated the medieval world. Far from the ocean's reach, in the bustling markets and quiet scriptoria of West Africa, a kingdom of wealth and wisdom was writing its own chapter in the story of lost empires. The Ghana Empire wasn't just a kingdom, it was a legend woven from gold and dust, a place so wealthy that medieval Arab traders swore its dogs wore golden collars and its rulers threw nuggets into the river to appease the gods. These weren't just tall tales, they were echoes of a civilization that dominated West Africa's trade routes for centuries, its influence stretching from the Sahara's edge to the forests of the south. Yet for all its fame, Ghana's reality is buried under layers of myth, shifting sands, and the deliberate secrecy of its rulers. Unlike empires that carved their histories in stone, Ghana thrived in whispers, its wealth measured in silent caravans of salt and gold, its power guarded by kings who hid their capital so well we're still searching for it today. At its peak around the 9th century, Ghana controlled the trade between gold-rich regions south of the Sahara and North African merchants hungry for the precious metal. Picture this, camel caravans 1,000 strong, trudging across the desert with slabs of salt strapped to their backs, a commodity so valuable it was traded weight for weight with gold. The empire taxed every ounce that passed through its territory, growing fabulously rich while keeping the actual sources of gold a closely guarded secret. Arab geographers wrote of a capital called Qum by Sail, a city of stone buildings and bustling markets where scholars debated under the shade of grand mosques. But here's the twist: no one's certain Qum by Sail was the real Ghana. Some archaeologists argue it might have been a later settlement, while Ghana's true heart lies elsewhere, swallowed by the Sahel's advancing sands. What's undeniable is Ghana's mastery of economics and diplomacy. The empire didn't just trade gold, it controlled the knowledge of where it came from, ensuring its middleman status remained unshaken. Kings presided over ceremonies where gold dust was sprinkled on the ground like sand, a display of power meant to awe foreign envoys. Yet this glittering facade hid a fragile reality. By the 12th century, climate change began tightening its grip. The Sahara crept southward, wells dried up, and the trade routes that were Ghana's lifeblood started to wither. Then came the Almoravid invasion, or did it? Some scholars now question whether this Berber Muslim conquest ever happened, suggesting Ghana's decline might have been slower, a fading ember rather than a sudden snuffing out. The empire's legacy lingers in the most unexpected places. Modern Ghana took its name as a tribute, though the original empire's territory lay farther north. Its gold trade patterns still influence West Africa's economy today, and buried beneath the dunes, there could be ruins waiting to rewrite history, perhaps even the real capital, its streets paved not with gold, but with the ordinary lives of people who built an extraordinary civilization. As the last traces of Ghana fade into the desert wind, another empire emerges from the green shadows of the jungle, one where pyramids rise not from sand, but from tangled vines and the cries of howler monkeys. From the Sahel's golden age, we plunge into the humid heart of the Americas, where a city of stone and mystery dared to challenge nature itself. The jungle doesn't just hide the Khmer Empire, it swallows it whole. Beneath Cambodia's dense canopy lies a metropolis so vast, it once dwarfed every medieval city on Earth. Angkor Wat, with its lotus-shaped towers and bas-reliefs stretching longer than football fields, is just the tip of the iceberg. Recent lidar scans have peeled back the greenery like a curtain, revealing a sprawling urban network of canals, roads, and suburbs that extended over 400 square miles, bigger than modern-day Los Angeles. This wasn't just a city. It was an engineered landscape, a hydraulic empire where water flowed with precision through reservoirs and moats, turning monsoons into a life source for nearly 1 million people. But how does a civilization this advanced vanish? Theories swirl like the monsoon rains that once fed its reservoirs. Some point to climate shifts, decades of drought followed by catastrophic floods that overwhelmed Khmer engineering. Others blame the empire's overreach, as endless temple construction and warfare drained resources. There's also the haunting possibility of a slow unraveling. As trade routes shifted south toward coastal ports, Angkor's inland power waned, its grand canals silting up like arteries clogged with time. The jungle didn't conquer the Khmer, it simply waited for them to leave, yet the most electrifying discoveries are still emerging. Lidar has exposed ghostly outlines of unknown temples and even entire neighborhoods buried under centuries of soil. One revelation: a massive, grid-like structure near Angkor Wat that might have been a workers' city, proof that the empire's labor force was vast, organized, and possibly mobile. And then there's the enigma of the lost cylinders, strange circular earthworks dotting the landscape, their purpose still debated. Were they gardens, ritual spaces, or part of a water management system so sophisticated we've only begun to decode its logic? Amid these ruins, another story whispers, one of warrior queens who defied expectations. While Angkor's kings dominate the carvings, inscriptions reveal women like Jayarajadvi, a 12th century queen who commanded troops and rebuilt temples after Cham invasions. Her legacy hints at a society where gender roles were more fluid than the empire's canals, where women could wield both spiritual and military power. Perhaps this is the Khmer's final lesson, that even in ruin they refuse to fit neatly into history's boxes. From the vine-choked temples of Angkor, we turn to an empire where women didn't just fight beside men, they ruled outright. Not as exceptions but as the norm, the steppes of Eurasia would soon tremble under the hooves of a very different kind of conqueror. The Scythians didn't just ride across the Eurasian steppe, they ruled it with a blend of terror and artistry that left even the ancient Greeks in awe. These nomadic horsemen built no cities, left no chronicles, yet their influence stretched from the Black Sea to the borders of China, a shadow empire woven from horsehair and gold. What we know of them comes not from their own words. They had no written language, but from the treasures they buried with their dead, intricate jewelry, weapons fused with animal motifs, and mummies so perfectly preserved in the permafrost that their tattoos still ripple across skin untouched by time. These weren't just burials, they were messages to the afterlife, sealed in massive earthen mounds called kurgans, some towering over the grasslands like silent sentinels. But the Scythians' true genius lay in their mobility. They lived in the saddle, turning horseback warfare into a deadly art form. Their composite bows could loose arrows with devastating accuracy at full gallop, and their hit-and-run tactics crippled slower, heavier armies. Yet for all their ferocity, they were also connoisseurs of beauty. Scythian goldwork, like the famous stag plaques from the Pazyryk burials, displays a craftsmanship so refined, it rivals anything produced by settled civilizations. Even their rituals defied expectations. Greek historian Herodotus wrote of them inhaling cannabis vapors in felt tents until they howled with pleasure, a practice modern archaeology has confirmed with residue found in burial vessels. Their legacy, however, is a puzzle wrapped in animal skins. Without written records, we're left to piece together their beliefs from grave goods and outsider accounts. Were they the originators of the Amazon myths that fascinated the Greeks? Did their shamans really wear antlered headdresses to commune with spirits? The answers might still lie buried in unopened kurgans scattered across Mongolia and Ukraine, waiting for a chance discovery. And then, just as suddenly as they appeared, the Scythians faded from history, absorbed by newer waves of steppe nomads. But their disappearance pales in comparison to the erasure of another culture, one whose name we barely know because colonialism scrubbed it from the map. From the windswept plains of Eurasia, we cross oceans to the Caribbean, where the Tano people thrived for centuries before European ships appeared on the horizon. The Tano weren't just another indigenous group, they were the first to welcome Columbus, the first to suffer the brunt of colonization, and the first to be written off as extinct. Yet their story is one of resilience hidden in plain sight. When Spanish chroniclers arrived, they described a society of skilled farmers, ball players, and astronomers who navigated by the stars. The Tano built ceremonial plazas called beitais, played a rubber ball game that may have influenced modern sports, and cultivated crops like cassava that still feed millions today. But within decades of contact, their population collapsed by 90%, decimated by disease, enslavement, and violence. For centuries, historians assumed the Tano vanished entirely. But modern genetics tells a different story. Across the Caribbean, from Cuba to Puerto Rico, DNA studies reveal that nearly half of today's population carries Tano ancestry. Their language lingers in words like hammock and hurricane. Their agricultural techniques still shape tropical farming, and their art, like the haunting zemi carvings of ancestral spirits, inspires contemporary indigenous movements. The Tano weren't wiped out. They were forced into hiding, blending survival with cultural secrecy. Now, archaeologists are uncovering their lost settlements underwater, where rising seas have preserved tools and ceramics untouched for centuries. Each discovery chips away at the myth of their extinction, revealing a people who adapted, endured, and quietly passed down traditions against impossible odds. The real mystery isn't how the Tano disappeared, it's how they managed to leave fingerprints on the modern world while history looked the other way. As we leave the Caribbean's turquoise waters, another civilization calls from the opposite side of the globe, one that carved its destiny not in gold or stone, but in the living bark of trees. Deep in the rainforests of Southeast Asia, a kingdom thrived by mastering something far more ephemeral: memory. The Tano called themselves the Good People, a name that resonates with tragic irony when you consider how history treated them. These were the faces Columbus first saw when he stumbled upon the Caribbean, not primitive tribes, but a sophisticated network of chiefdoms with complex agriculture, celestial navigation, and a spiritual world as rich as their tropical surroundings. Their villages, laid out around central plazas called beitais, buzzed with ball games that were both sport and sacred ritual. Players used hips and elbows to bounce rubber balls, a material the Tano harvested from trees centuries before vulcanization across courts that doubled as portals to the afterlife. But it's their zemi carvings that haunt us most. Wooden figures with hollowed eyes, some grinning, some grimacing, all whispering secrets we're still struggling to hear. These zemes weren't just idols, they were vessels. Tano shamans believed the carvings housed ancestral spirits who could intercede with the gods, cure illness, or curse enemies. Some zemes even had removable compartments, likely filled with hallucinogenic jojoba powder used in vision quests. Yet despite their power, the meanings behind these artifacts remain just out of reach. Like the petroglyphs pecked into cave walls across Puerto Rico and Hispaniola spirals that might map the cosmos, or frog-like figures that could symbolize fertility, each discovery feels like a sentence from a book we've lost the alphabet to read. Modern archaeology is piecing together fragments of that lost text. Excavations reveal that the Tano engineered their landscape with precision, building raised beds called conucos to grow cassava, a crop they detoxified through an elaborate process of grating and pressing, a culinary innovation that literally kept generations alive. Their fishing techniques were equally ingenious, using remora fish tethered to lines to catch sea turtles, but the most startling revelations come from genetics. While colonial records declared the Tano extinct by the mid-1500s, DNA proves their bloodlines never vanished. Across the Caribbean, from Cuba to Dominica, up to 60% of people carried Tano ancestry. Their legacy pulses in living hearts, not just museum cases. Now, underwater archaeologists are finding what the sands have guarded for centuries. Off the coast of the Bahamas, a ceremonial canoe paddle lies preserved in a blue hole, its wood still bearing the marks of its maker's tools. In Puerto Rico's caves, previously overlooked petroglyphs glow under new scanning technology, revealing layers of art superimposed over centuries. Each clue suggests the Tano were far more numerous and interconnected than we imagined. A maritime culture that traded not just goods, but ideas across the Antilles. Yet for all these breakthroughs, one question lingers like smoke from a sacred fire. What wisdom died with the last Tano elders? The answer might lie in the unlikeliest of places, not in the Caribbean, but in the towering cliff cities of another vanished civilization. High in the American Southwest, where red rock meets endless sky, the Ancestral Puebloans built their own answer to the Tano's beitais, apartment complexes carved into sheer canyon walls, their windows staring out like the hollow eyes of 1,000 zemis. The cliffs of Choco Canyon rise like ancient sentinels, their sandstone faces carved with the echoes of a people who mastered the high desert. The ancestral Puebloans didn't just survive here, they thrived, building multi-story great houses with hundreds of rooms, their walls aligned to catch the solstice sun with precision that would make modern architects envious. These weren't mere dwellings, they were celestial calendars in stone, their doorways and windows framing the movements of the moon and stars. At its peak in the 11th century, Choco was the heart of a cultural web stretching across the southwest, connected by arrow-straight roads that vanished into the horizon. Yet by 1250 CE, the canyon lay silent, its great houses emptied of everything but wind and shadows. What happened? The clues are as layered as the canyon's own geology. Tree rings tell a story of relentless drought decades where the rains never came, where crops withered and springs ran dry. But climate alone doesn't explain the exquisite pottery shards left behind, or the absence of violence in the ruins. Some archaeologists see signs of a deliberate exodus, a people voting with their feet against rigid social hierarchies. Others point to traces of conflict-burned timbers, defensive structures hinting at internal strife or raids from outsiders. The most haunting theory that the Puebloans didn't fall at all. Their descendants, the Hopi and Zuni among others, speak of migrations not as collapse but as prophecy fulfilled, a cyclical journey to new centers of balance. Modern Pueblo oral histories describe Choco as a place of both power and caution, where ambition eventually outstripped harmony. Petroglyphs near the canyon depict spirals that might map migrations or cosmic cycles, their meanings guarded by generations. And then there's the enigma of the Choco Meridian, a mysterious north-south alignment linking sacred sites across the southwest. Was it a pilgrimage route? A celestial roadmap? The answers may lie not in the abandoned stone, but in the living traditions of those who still call the Puebloans ancestors. As the dust of Choco settles behind us, our journey ascends, not just in altitude but in legend. From the sun-baked canyons of the southwest, we climb into the mist-shrouded peaks of the Himalayas, where a kingdom wrapped in myth promises not just lost history, but the tantalizing whisper of immortality. High in the valleys of western Tibet, the Jangjong Empire flourished at heights where most would struggle to breathe, their story etched in monasteries and the very air itself. The air grows thin as we ascend into the realm of the Jangjong Kingdom, a civilization that thrived in the roof of the world where the Himalayas scraped the sky. This wasn't just a kingdom, it was a spiritual fortress, its heart beating around the sacred slopes of Mount Kailash, a peak so revered that even today, pilgrims from Buddhism, Hinduism, and Jainism circle its base in prayer. But long before these faiths touched Tibet, the Jangjong people carved their own path, weaving a tapestry of myth and stone that still baffles scholars. Their temples cling to cliffsides like eagles' nests, their walls adorned with swastikas spinning counterclockwise, an ancient symbol of the Bon religion, a tradition so old it predates Buddhism by centuries. Bon isn't just a religion, it's a window into a lost world. Imagine shamans clad in turquoise and silver, chanting over soul lakes said to mirror the heavens, their rituals designed to navigate the space between worlds. These lakes, like Mapam Yumtso, aren't just bodies of water, they're living altars, their surfaces reflecting the snow-capped peaks in such perfect symmetry that pilgrims swear they're gateways to other realms. The Jangjong believed these waters held the keys to immortality, a concept that might sound fantastical until you consider the sheer endurance of their culture. Even after Tibetan kings absorbed their kingdom in the 8th century, Bon's influence seeped into Buddhism like ink into parchment, shaping rituals and iconography in ways still visible today. And then there's the mystery of their capital, Kyunglong and Golkar, the Silver Palace of the Garuda Valley. described in texts as a paradise of gem-studded temples and floating palaces. Its ruins now lie scattered near Mount Kailash, their stones whispering of a time when the Jangjong commanded trade routes linking India to Central Asia. Some archaeologists believe the palace's fabled silver wasn't just metaphor. The region's rivers still yield nuggets of the metal, hinting at a wealth that could have financed empires. But the real treasure might be intangible. Bond scriptures, hidden for centuries in cave libraries, describe advanced meditation techniques and cosmological maps that some say inspired the Shangri-La legends. Could the Jangjong have been the original keepers of that mythical utopia, a place where time slows and wisdom flows eternal? The parallels are too striking to ignore. Yet for all their spiritual grandeur, the Jangjong's disappearance is as enigmatic as their rituals. Did they fall to Tibetan armies, or did they simply dissolve into the cultural fabric of the plateau? The answer might lie in the unlikeliest of places, not in the Himalayas but in the dust-choked plains of Mesopotamia, where another empire's echoes ripple through time. From the thin air of Tibet, we descend to the cradle of civilization, where the Kassite kings ruled Babylon not with iron, but with a silence so profound, historians are still piecing together their story. Buried beneath the dust of southwestern Iran lies a civilization so formidable. It once held Babylon in check, yet its name barely echoes in history books. The Elamite Empire wasn't just another kingdom in Mesopotamia's shadow. It was a cultural titan with its own script, its own gods, and a capital, Susa, whose ziggurats gleamed with glazed bricks that rivaled anything in Babylon. What set Elam apart wasn't just its power, it was its voice. While neighbors like the Akkadians and Sumerians wrote in familiar cuneiform, Elamite scribes carved a language so distinct, so stubbornly unrelated to any known tongue, that linguists still debate its origins. This wasn't just a dialect, it was a linguistic island, a defiant declaration of independence in a region where empires rose and fell by the sword. Yet Elam's greatest challenge wasn't conquest, it was survival. Time and again, invaders stormed Susa's gates, from the Assyrians with their siege engines to the Persians who eventually absorbed Elam into their own empire. Each left scars, but none could erase Elam's legacy entirely. Its art, like the haunting bronze statue of Queen Napier Asu, her gown inscribed with prayers to the gods, shows a sophistication that transcended war. Even their downfall became a metamorphosis. When Cyrus the Great founded Persia, he borrowed Elamite administrative systems, turning their innovations into the backbone of his own superpower. But here's the tragedy. Elam's story is scattered like shards of a broken vase. Looters have plundered its tombs, smuggling artifacts from gold earrings to inscribed tablets onto the black market. One of the most heartbreaking losses, the infamous Susa wedding letter, a clay tablet that might have revealed intimate details of royal life, sold to a private collector before scholars could decode it. Every looted artifact isn't just a stolen object, it's a stolen chapter in humanity's shared history. Now, imagine a different kind of empire, one built not on conquest but on connection. From the sun-baked plains of Elam, we leap across oceans to a trade network so vast, its influence stretched from the Gulf of Mexico to the Great Lakes. This wasn't a kingdom with a single ruler, but a web of relationships woven by the Hopewell culture, where obsidian from Wyoming, copper from Michigan, and seashells from Florida changed hands in ceremonies that bound ancient America together. Their monuments weren't ziggurats, but earthworks, giant geometric shapes and mounds that aligned with the stars, proving that even without written words, some empires leave their mark on the land itself. Rising from the floodplains of the Mississippi like an ancient earthen cathedral, Monk's Mound still dominates the landscape, a silent testament to the vanished city of Cahokia. At its peak around 1100 CE, this was the beating heart of North America, a sprawling metropolis home to 20,000 people, its skyline dotted with over 100 earthen pyramids. The scale defies belief. Monk's Mound alone contains 22 million cubic feet of soil, hauled basket by basket without beasts of burden or wheels. But Cahokia's true genius wasn't just in its construction, it was in its cosmology. Nearby, archaeologists uncovered remnants of a woodhenge, a circle of towering cedar posts aligned to mark solstices and equinoxes. Imagine the scene, priests tracking celestial events from the summit of the mound, while below, a bustling plaza thrummed with games of chunky, a ritual sport where stone discs rolled across polished clay courts. Yet by 1400 CE, the city stood empty. What could drive people to abandon such a marvel? The leading theory points to the very river that sustained them. Soil samples reveal layers of catastrophic flood deposits, evidence of back-to-back deluges that would have drowned crops, collapsed homes, and turned orderly streets into swamps. But floods alone don't explain the absence of violence in the ruins. Some scholars argue Cahokia's downfall was social, a rebellion against elites who demanded ever grander mounds, or a spiritual crisis as astronomical predictions failed amid climatic chaos. The truth may lie in the bones. Skeletal remains show signs of malnutrition in Cahokia's final decades, while nearby villages thrived, hinting at a deliberate exodus toward more stable land. Now shift your gaze from the Mississippi's mud to the emerald depths of Honduras, where legends speak of white cities gleaming in the jungle. For centuries, explorers dismissed these tales as myth until lidar peeled back the canopy in 2015, revealing the ruins of a sprawling metropolis now called La Ciudad Blanca. This wasn't just a settlement, it was the heart of a forgotten civilization, its plazas and pyramids so overgrown they'd become part of the forest itself. Unlike Cahokia's earthworks, these structures were built from pale limestone, giving the city its ghostly glow. Artifacts found here, a jade-carved jaguar's ceremonial metatess, suggest a culture that traded with Maya and Aztec, yet left no written records to explain its sudden abandonment. Was it disease, war, or something as simple as a shifting trade route? The jungle guards its secrets tightly, but each excavated stone whispers of an empire waiting to rewrite Central America's history. When David Livingstone first wrote of encountering massive stone ruins in the heart of the Kalahari, his contemporaries dismissed the tales as fever dreams or mirages, just another fantastical yarn from a man who'd spent too long under the African sun. But what if the famous explorer wasn't hallucinating? Recent lidar surveys over Botswana's Makgadikgadi pans have revealed anomalies beneath the salt flats, geometric patterns, and what appear to be the foundations of stone structures, half buried in the very region Livingstone described. These aren't random rock formations. The precision of the layouts suggests deliberate construction, possibly dating back to the same era as Great Zimbabwe, that soaring stone city to the northeast whose origins still spark debate. Could these ruins be the remnants of a sister civilization, a trading outpost, or even a rival kingdom that once tapped into the same gold and ivory networks that made Zimbabwe legendary? The parallels are tantalizing. Both sites lie along ancient trade routes that funneled wealth from the interior to coastal ports like Kilwa. Both show evidence of advanced dry stone masonry, where rocks are fitted together without mortar, a technique so enduring that Zimbabwe's walls still stand after 7 centuries. But while Zimbabwe's purpose is etched in its very name, Dizimbabwe Mabwe, or Houses of Stone in Shona, the Kalahari Ruins raise more questions than answers. Who built them? Why abandon a city in one of the harshest environments on Earth? And most intriguingly, what happened to the water? Satellite imagery shows ghostly river channels snaking beneath the pans, hinting that this was once a fertile crossroads before the climate turned against it. Local oral traditions speak of a people called the Barlola, said to have vanished into the desert after a great drought. Could they be the architects, or were these structures the work of Zimbabwean traders, pushing their networks deeper into the interior than we ever imagined? Every shard of pottery, every scorched hearth uncovered here rewrites the map of pre-colonial Africa, proving that the continent's history was anything but isolated. The real revelation might be yet to come. Imagine uncovering a trove of artifacts linking these ruins directly to Zimbabwe's gold trade, or inscriptions in a script that could finally decode southern Africa's lost languages. As the Kalahari's secrets slowly emerge from the dust, our journey descends from dry stone to deep water, where the final empire on our list didn't just rise and fall, it sank. Off the coast of India, where the Bay of Bengal meets the Indian Ocean, local fishermen have dragged up oddities for generations: carved pillars, bronze figurines, even chunks of masonry that don't match any known ruins onshore. These aren't random shipwrecks. They're clues to a civilization so thoroughly drowned that its name survives only in cryptic Sanskrit texts: the legendary city of Puhar, capital of the Chola dynasty's early maritime empire, said to have been swallowed by the sea in a single catastrophic flood. The Mahabalipuram shore temples, their bases lapped by tides, might be the last visible fragments of a much larger port complex now underwater. Marine archaeologists have identified submerged walls and plazas stretching nearly a mile offshore, structures that align eerily with ancient descriptions of Puhar's Golden Hall and bustling docks. But the real discovery came in 2004, when the tsunami that ravaged Southeast Asia temporarily sucked the ocean floor bare, exposing a series of carved lions and elephant sculptures near Mahabalipuram. These weren't just artworks, they were markers of a grand waterfront, likely part of the Chola's royal precinct. What makes Puhar haunting isn't just its physical disappearance, it's how thoroughly its maritime legacy was forgotten. Centuries before European powers discovered ocean routes, the Cholas mastered monsoon winds to sail as far as Indonesia, their ships laden with spices, silks, and temple bronzes. Their decline wasn't sudden conquest, but a slow fading as trade shifted to other ports, their achievements overshadowed by later empires. Now, as sonar maps more of the seabed, each scan brings us closer to solving the puzzle. Did Puhar fall to the waves, or was it abandoned before the waters rose? The answer could rewrite our understanding of how civilizations end, not with a bang, but with a whisper, as the sea claims what history has already forgotten. The Guadalquivir River winds through southern Spain like a silver thread, its delta fanning out into marshes that hide one of Europe's most tantalizing Bronze Age secrets. Here, where the land meets the sea, the Tartessos Civilization thrived in a realm of legend, a kingdom so rich in metals that Phoenician traders wrote of its mountains of silver, where rivers ran with gold and palaces gleamed under the Iberian sun. For centuries, Tartessos was the El Dorado of the Mediterranean, a beacon for sailors and a puzzle for scholars. Yet today, despite countless expeditions, no grand capital has emerged from the delta's silt. Was Tartessos a real empire or just a glittering mirage spun from traders' tales? The answer might rewrite history. What we know comes from whispers in clay. Phoenician merchants who established colonies along Spain's coast around 900 BCE described Tartessos as a sophisticated culture with its own script, a hybrid of local and Levantine symbols scratched onto bronze tablets. Greek historian Herodotus spun even grander stories, claiming Tartessian kings sent 4,000 pounds of silver to Pharaoh Psamtik I as tribute, but the most compelling evidence lies beneath the wetlands. Near Hulva, archaeologists unearthed a 9th century BCE hoard, gold jewelry, silver ingots, and ornate bronzes mixing local styles with Phoenician influences, proof of a vibrant trade hub. Yet the heart of Tartessos, its royal seat, remains elusive. Some believe rising sea levels drowned its cities. Others argue Tartessos wasn't a centralized state at all, but a loose confederation of wealthy ports that faded when metal deposits ran dry. Then there's the Atlantis connection, Plato's doomed island, described as lying beyond the Pillars of Hercules, matches Tartessos' location near Gibraltar. Both were said to be advanced, metal-rich civilizations that vanished suddenly. Could Tartessos' collapse, whether from a tsunami, as some geologists speculate, or economic collapse, have inspired the Atlantis myth? The timing fits. Tartessos faded around 600 BCE, just as Greek sailors began venturing west. Without a smoking gun like Pompeii's ash-preserved ruins, the theory remains speculative, but it's a reminder of how easily history blurs into legend. The search for Tartessos isn't just about finding walls or treasure. It's about reclaiming a lost chapter of human ingenuity. This was a culture that mastered metallurgy while much of Europe still clung to stone, that negotiated with empires as equals, not subjects. Every pottery shard or inscribed tablet pulled from the Guadalquivir's mud is a testament to resilience, a whisper that even the mightiest civilizations can slip through history's cracks. And that's the true power of rediscovery. It humbles us. For all our satellites and sonar, the past still guards its secrets, waiting for the right moment to reveal them. As we leave Spain's shimmering delta behind, another mystery calls one not of silver but of spice. Far to the east, where the Indian Ocean's waves lick the shores of Yemen, a kingdom rose from the desert's edge, its fortunes built on the most coveted commodity of the ancient world. The air there still carries the scent of frankincense, a ghost of the wealth that once flowed through its gates. 20 empires, 20 fragments of a global puzzle, each whispering secrets that challenge the stories we thought we knew. From the jungle-choked pyramids of the Khmer to the gold-laden sands of Ghana, these lost civilizations weren't just footnotes in history. They were titans whose innovations, artistry, and ambitions rivaled any textbook empire. Think about it, the Wari engineered mountains into farms while Europe clung to feudal manners. The Sriwijaya ruled an invisible kingdom of waves when most maps still showed dragons at the edges. The Tano, written off as extinct, left their DNA and their resilience woven into millions alive today. These aren't just gaps in the record, they're glaring reminders that history has always been written by the victors, the survivors, the ones who stayed visible. But visibility is shifting. Modern explorers wield tools straight out of science fiction. Lidar peels back entire forests to reveal grid-like cities, while underwater drones scan seafloors for drowned temples. DNA analysis resurrects migrations we never recorded, and AI deciphers scripts that baffled scholars for centuries. Even the humble smartphone plays a role. Crowdsourced archaeology apps let anyone flag pottery shards or odd rock formations, turning global citizens into treasure hunters. The barriers to rediscovery aren't technological anymore. They're about where we choose to look. That's the real adventure here. The past isn't dead, it's hiding beneath your hometown, under desert sands, or just beyond the next coral reef. And the next great find, it might come from a farmer's plow striking stone, a backpacker spotting carvings in a cave, or you pausing to wonder about that odd mound on a hike. Every empire on this list started as a rumor until someone dared to dig deeper. So, which one captivates you? The warrior queens of Kush, the star-reading navigators of Taitonga. Drop your pick in the comments, and who knows, your curiosity might just spark the next big discovery. Don't forget to subscribe. History's greatest mysteries are still out there, waiting for their storytellers.